Okay, so if you're alive in 2023, you'll know people are addicted to their phones, right? They're addicted to all kinds of technology. Everybody got technology, you know what I mean? What we're using right now, you know, me and you, the creator and the viewer. I have to use technology to create this. You have to use technology to view this. We all use it, right? And it's like magic, you know, and it's constant entertainment that we can just have, and it's in a handheld now, you know, and we keep it on us at all times. Speaking of which, it reminds me to charge my phone. But I was at IHOP today with some friends, and you know, I'm over there, you know, trying to talk to people, and I do this every time, because it's not only one time that this has happened, but I do it all the time that I'm anywhere at any event. I know we've all experienced this. You're at an event with like a family or some friends or something like that. It could be like at a dinner table. You could be out somewhere eating at a restaurant. You'll come to find out people, at least at some point during that event, they'll get on their phones. You'll look around, you'll see everybody, blah, 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 and everybody just on TikTok. I come home, my mom's on TikTok. Anywhere I look, you know, when people are bored, they're just on TikTok. I ask a girl nowadays, what do you do? You know, I mean, it's not like I have the most interesting hobbies. I play video games, and I watch a lot of Instagram Reels. I'm not free from this. You know, we all suffer from this, you know, addiction of overstimulation. That's what we're going to be watching. Let's get right into it, man.
The year is 1665, and Isaac Newton is looking out his window at an apple tree standing tall in his orchard in Lincolnshire, England.
This motherfucker's going back to the time of Isaac?
All of a sudden, a ripe and lonely apple falls from the tree and makes its way to the ground. While most people would consider this a mundane event, Newton followed its trajectory with great interest. What young Isaac didn't know at the time was that this apple would become the most famous piece of fruit in human history, as its natural attraction to the ground would spark a moment of genius, leading him to create the laws of motion that revolutionized modern physics. Newton wasn't conducting an experiment when he discovered the laws of gravity. He wasn't overloading his brain with information trying to figure it out. He was simply looking aimlessly outside his window. He was bored. But that was in the 17th century. Times have changed a lot since then. These days, we hardly ever allow ourselves to just stare out a window or sit in our backyards doing nothing.
Being bored is like the ultimate taboo. I mean, that's just literally what people don't want. You could do anything, right? I've said this sometimes, and just, you know, with certain girls, you know, you could do anything to a girl, but you better not bore her. You know what I mean? And I know that sounds bad. That sounds like I'm generalized. I don't want, you know. No, it's true for some girls, not all of them, but like for a lot of girls, you could do like a lot of things. You could be a dickhead. You could be a lot of things that you'd say, well, you know, nobody would want that. You know, why would you be, you know, you could be probably a whole lot of things before being a boring person. Because if you're a boring person, like that's the ultimate social taboo. You know what I mean?
We never pause for a moment and just let our minds wander into deep, unexplored territories. Turns out that diving deep into our own thoughts is something that we don't really like to do. We find it boring, and we'll do anything to alleviate boredom. Even if it means subjecting ourselves to self-inflicted electric shocks. This, sadly, is not an exaggeration. In a study conducted at the University of Virginia, a social psychologist named Timothy Wilson recruited hundreds of student volunteers to take part in what he called thinking periods. Individuals were placed in small rooms with blank walls and no personal belongings. They were asked to entertain themselves with nothing but their thoughts for just 6 to 15 minutes. When asked to rate their experience afterwards, about 50% of the volunteers did not like being alone with their thoughts, citing it was boring. Then, researchers left the volunteers in the room for another 15 minutes. This time, though, they introduced a button that participants could press to shock themselves if they wanted to. Around 67% of men and 25% of women chose to voluntarily inflict pain on themselves rather than just sit and do nothing.
Men a whole lot more than women.
This research suggests that, sadly,
I wonder why that is.
A lot of us would rather experience physical pain than sit in our...
Could that mean that we men are more easily bored? Or do it with something else? Because there's a variable there, you know, because it is inflicting pain. It could also mean when bored, we're more willing to, well, that's exactly what's happening there. But are we also just generally more willing to inflict pain on ourselves? It's a good question.
Thoughts. When left with nothing else to do, most of us immediately grab our phones, switching from one app to the other, as the algorithms of the internet feed us with the exact content that'll keep us from being bored. What we fail to realize is that for these algorithms to understand what makes us tick, they take so much of our information. Companies then sell that information Things like your name, phone number, and home address, to data brokers who sell them to other companies. What's worse is that sometimes these data brokers are involved in data breaches, where all the information they have about you is stolen by nefarious actors. A few months ago, my friend got this message from Google telling him that some of his passwords were found in a data breach from a company that he'd never heard of before. And right after, he started getting personalized email ads from scam companies.
If Google's the one that has to tell you your data's being breached, my God, your data has been breached. Because, oh my God. Are they going to be your guardian angel, Google, out of all people, telling you your data's being breached? Oh, wow. That's awesome.
This is how scammers are able to figure out your personal information.
Cracking down on it, but Google's
the good news is that you can get these data brokers to delete the information they have about you. Sadly, to do it manually could take years. This is why I love using the sponsor of today's episode, Incognito. And deal with the description.
Get your money, dog. Get your money.
Not happy? You get a full refund. You definitely want to 1665 and
okay, we're going back.
Back to our story.
Let's go.
In the spring and summer of 1665, an outbreak of bubonic plague spread through London, and by July,
I remember that, John.
More than 17,000 lives.
No, I'm kidding.
Almost at once, people throughout the city began fleeing to the countryside, isolating themselves in fear for their lives.
Right.
Among those who fled was none other than Sir Isaac Newton. Of course, at that time,
for the bubonic plague?
Newton had not yet been knighted. In fact, he had not yet even witnessed the famous apple falling. Interestingly though, his 2 years spent in isolation, away from the bells, whistles, and distractions of the city, was the time when Newton's genius came to life, and he was able to invent calculus, create the science of motion, and develop a framework for gravity.
He was that bored, yeah.
These 2 years spent in quarantine were Newton's own 15 minutes
But I'm glad he was that bored, because that's what he created out of that boredom is super useful to us.
Isolated in a room with nothing to do. Newton, however, didn't seek external stimuli to prevent his mind from wandering. Instead, he welcomed the boredom that often comes with deep thinking, and stared out the window, which has, without a doubt, paid dividends for all of humanity. During this isolation in the countryside, Newton also invented calculus. Throughout his life, he also made major...
That is stimulating to him, though. He is trying to quench the boredom, like the whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's him being a little less bored inventing calculus and I guess maybe staring out the window and pondering stuff.
Discoveries in optics, proposing that white light is actually a combination of light from all of the color spectrum. Most famously, following his Apple incident, he developed the 3 laws of motion. In all fairness, attributing Newton's greatest accomplishments to him being quarantined in the countryside is a bit misleading. The truth is, the incident of the apple falling wasn't an isolated moment of genius. Newton's various contributions to science were the product of years of hard work and dedication, tediously working towards these moments of revelation. However, it is still helpful to recognize the importance of solitude and boredom in creating that particular eureka moment. According to psychologist Dr. Sandy Mann of the University of Central Lancashire, once we start daydreaming and allow our brains to wander like Newton did when he looked out the window, we start thinking beyond the conscious and into the subconscious, which allows for all sorts of connections to take place. This is called the default mode. When you're bored or performing mundane tasks like doing the dishes or folding the laundry, your body may be on autopilot, but your brain is actually pretty busy. When in the default mode, your mind gets the chance to connect to different ideas, try and solve some of your most pressing problems, and even create personal narratives or set goals. This is why programmers often tell you that they figured out their problem with their code just as they were jumping into bed, ready to get some shut-eye, or why you feel like your best ideas come when you jump in the shower. The problem is that today, those are the very rare moments that we allow ourselves to be bored.
I think most of my life spent in default mode. Not like, I don't want to say autopilot, but I mean, kinda, because I mean, I wander around, you know, I mind wander, you know, I'm easily distracted, you know, like, it's bad.
Every other time, we almost always choose the electric shock method. Living in a society where we have the entire world of entertainment on our fingertips has led to our immediate dissatisfaction with even seconds of boredom. The more we fill our world with fast-moving, high-intensity stimulation, the more we get used to it, and the less of a tolerance we have for boredom.
That's what I'm saying.
On average, Americans reach for their phones 344 times a day. That's once every 4 minutes. From quick email checks to diving down the rabbit hole of reels and memes, Americans spend an average of 2 hours and 54 minutes on their phone each year.
344. Let me check my pickups, ladies and gentlemen. This week, see y'all activity. Where can I see the pickups? 142, a daily average. So I have less daily average than average Americans. But I picked it up already 103 times today. And it's only, well, it is 310, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm not so addicted. Maybe I'm just like the average, the average phone user.
Each day, with some people clocking up to 10 hours a day on their phones.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, technology has definitely made the world a better place.
I'm on technology
but this unhealthy, dependent relationship we have with our phones is robbing us of our most creative selves. German psychologist Theodor Lipps proposed one of the first definitions of boredom in 1903, saying, "Boredom is a feeling of displeasure arising out of conflict between a need for intense mental activity and lack of incitement to it, or inability to be incited." In other words, it's an underwhelming state where none of the options available to us seem appealing. Instead of letting this feeling run its course, we overstimulate our brain and prevent it from taking advantage of the true power of this downtime. Our first instinct when we experience boredom is to just endlessly scroll through feeds.
So that's where he's going with this story, right? Like we're missing out on a crucial part of what it means to be a creative human being because we're constantly trying to stimulate ourselves. Like we're so scared of being bored. We're so against it. We hate it. We need to be stimulated, and that is what makes us never be in default mode, never just be bored. And we're missing out on like the powerful and very useful stuff, very crucial and important stuff that goes on when we're bored, and we're missing out on that. We're completely missing a part of what it means to be a human being.
Social media apps.
I see that a lot, man.
Even when we're walking from one room to the next or waiting for the cashier to
everybody's
bag our groceries.
Like this. How is this going to make
people... We've become conditioned to constantly seek out novelty and deliver a hit of dopamine to our brain.
How is this going to change people?
Sadly, once that sense of novelty fades, it leaves behind a stronger feeling of boredom, which we then try to get rid of with even more stimulation. It's a vicious cycle that keeps our brain occupied. Mindless entertainment designed to capture our attention for the longest time possible. Studies have shown that, when given tasks that require minimal mental capacity, participants often contemplated their future and their plans for it. On the other hand, if your brain is constantly consumed by stimuli, it'll rarely have the time to think of the bigger picture and is less likely to set goals for the future or to be more creative.
Right.
A 2017 study from Georgia Institute of Technology measured the brain patterns of more than 100 people. Participants were asked to focus on a stationary point while they lay in a MRI machine. The goal was to figure out which areas of the brain worked together during an awake but resting state. The team compared the data with questionnaires that the participants filled out about how much their minds wandered in daily life. It turns out participants who had reported more frequent daydreaming scored higher on intellectual and creative ability and had more efficient brain systems recorded on the MRI. These findings are supported by a lot of artists when discussing their creative process. In his book Creative Quest, music producer and drummer for The Roots, Questlove, wrote about his battle against the many distractions available to us in today's world. On the face of it, it doesn't make any sense. Boredom seems like the least creative feeling, but it's actually a way of clearing space for a new idea to spring back up. Similarly, J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter series, formulated all the ideas for her book in a 4-hour train ride from Manchester to London. If she had an iPad and binge-watched her favorite Netflix show instead, she probably wouldn't have brought Harry in his magical world to life.
Yeah, imagine
in his book Daily Rituals, Mason Curry studied
how many things have we missed out on so far because people were watching and binge watching, their favorite show.
Teams of hundreds of other artists, writers, and creatives, and concluded that boredom is a recurring theme that leads to the mind wandering and having a kind of diffused focus which allows for creative production. This diffused state is when the mind enters its default mode and comes up with its best work. Perhaps the best proof of this truth is none other than Albert Einstein himself. Einstein took over where Newton left off and gave us a more advanced definition of gravity with the notion of a curved spacetime. Einstein was known for his extremely vivid imagination and inspired thought experiments that allowed him to define time as the fourth dimension and to change our understanding of the mechanics of the universe itself. Many people believe that the seeds of his genius were planted during the year he took off from high school in the 1890s, when he simply wandered without purpose and contemplated the world, free from any external pressures. Throughout his life, Einstein would take regular walks to clear his mind, and in a letter he wrote to his friends while sailing in 1932, he said, "A cruise in the sea is an excellent opportunity for maximum calm and reflection on ideas from a different perspective." It was clear that he knew the importance of sitting still and letting the mind wander. Our history is full of many great thinkers who have been conscious enough to take advantage of their downtime and utilize it in the name of creative production.
Right.
Psychologists today encourage parents to allow their children to be bored instead of occupying all their time watching YouTube on their tablets. The idea is to give the young minds the time and space needed to discover, create, and find their own genius. Teaching people, especially kids, how to use technology to improve their lives while also self-regulating their exposure to it should be a crucial part of digital literacy. There's a saying used in tech: when the product is free, you are the product. Our attention is being fought for by a magnitude of applications, and at the end of the day, we're left with no time to just sit and contemplate.
And at the end of the day, all of these companies, TikTok, all of them want to design their algorithm and to design their apps. They hire professional psychologists that understand attention and understand how to grasp your attention. They are masters of just taking your attention, of like seeking it out and finding it and achieving it and getting it, right? If they want your attention, they'll get it. You know what I mean? They hire masters in that field to create an app that is purposely addicting, and they won't necessarily lie about it, but they won't necessarily tell you either. This app is designed to keep your attention. They get paid off of how much of your attention they can have. You know what I mean? Like, it's designed to keep you addicted, to be an addicting app, to keep using, constantly scrolling. Doom scrolling is the new word, right? It's like everybody does it. Can't even say I don't do it. I find myself, when I'm bored, I find myself on Instagram reels, you know, like scrolling. I do it. I try not to whenever I catch myself, but it's hard. It's just hard. Like, is he gonna tell us how people are gonna be able to get out of this? Like, do you know how deeply entrenched some of these people are into this addiction? How are we gonna get out of this?
On our own life and experiences. But that shouldn't be the case. Next time you find yourself reaching for your phone when you're bored, remember, you're choosing to voluntarily shock yourself. Instead of looking out the window and contemplating on your own metaphorical apple
That's a great way to think
falling
about
from the tree. You'd be surprised what your mind can achieve when you just allow it to wander for a moment.
And that's another video just like it. Dopamine, the most controversial hormone. That's what we all want. We're all just chemical fiends. We're all dopamine fiends. Let's be real here. Because without it, life, like if you imagine a person that experienced no dopamine, well then, no, as little dopamine as possible, but has experienced it, so they even know that there is something like dopamine to be experienced in the world. Like, that person, like, they don't, I wouldn't blame them if they killed themselves. I'm not gonna hold you. Like, life without dopamine, like, what even is the point? Like, if you don't feel good at any point in life, why would you honestly choose to keep living? Like, that's where we have all of these, you know, immortality projects. We have all of these things that give meaning to our lives. I mean, we're fighting for something bigger than ourselves. But are you really going to suffer the entirety of your life for something that's bigger than you, that you can't even necessarily confirm that it's real, but you'll believe in it anyway for the sake of your own suffering, for the sake of there being meaning to your suffering? You know, like, you need to believe that. Otherwise, there's no meaning to your suffering, and you're suffering. That's your life. You know, and you barely have a dopamine. Like, we need dopamine, but it's a very controversial hormone. That's right. That's right. I'm gonna catch you guys in the next one. Yeah, an app that's purpose is to overstimulate you. That's always how it's gonna be. You know, you have to use the things that you have to use the system that's in place that you're critiquing to critique the system you're critiquing, if you know what I mean. Like, I probably said that wrong, but you get what I'm saying. I'm gonna end it right there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you made it all the way through to the end, let me know what you guys want me to react to next, man. And I appreciate you guys watching this. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, man. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you.